Welcome to Golden Hour Adventures, a podcast that's not about running, but we always have runners on. And today we have another runner. So, Heidi Baker, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We don't do any like crazy introductions or anything like that. We just welcome to the podcast, and this is our guest.
Yeah.
Now it's your turn.
Sometimes if it's just Robbie and I, we don't know what to do with our hands after we make the introduction because we don't have anybody to introduce and joke around with.
I like the intro voice, though. I feel like I need to get my intro voice down for my own podcast now.
I totally just made that up right there on
Oh.
the spot. I decided I would go deep into the mic and make an intro voice. So here we are.
There
I guess
you
when you have your own
first time.
podcast, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
You could try things out. If you
Yeah.
didn't like my intro voice, leave us a note and let us know. Robbie, how's the van life going?
It's been so hot here. I've been not really working on it. Been
You wanna
doing
catch-
stuff on the outside.
Catch us up, man. Where are you at with it?
So right now need to go back and finish up the interior. The four-wheel drive's in. Engine-
Robbie took a 2-wheel drive and swapped it to a 4-wheel drive. He's like making his own
Wow.
like adventure van
Oh, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
just in his spare time. Like, I want to make
cons-
an adventure van, and then
but it's
just
consuming all my time.
he doesn't even run anymore. He just works on the van.
When I lay down to bed, I think about what I can do next on the van.
Not thinking about trail running, just thinking
No.
about the van.
That's
Well,
awesome.
hopefully the plan is for him to finish the van and then drive it to Alaska.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, I'm in Savannah. So it is very hot here. Very hot, very humid.
Yeah, I think it's 61 where I'm at, so
Oh,
you know, it's
don't even talk. We
smoking
had
hot.
a heat index of, I don't even know today. It was 90% humidity, 80% dew point, and 100 degrees when I went running this morning.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
That's gross.
It's pretty gross. Yeah. Pretty gross. So,
Well, Heidi,
yeah,
let's,
I'm in Savannah.
let's get into your story. How'd you get into running?
So I started running, I guess it's about 10 years ago because my son is turning 10, but it basically when I became a mom. I had previously been in the Army, and I really only ran when I was required to pass my 2-mile PT test, and hated every second of it. And so I always hated running.
How long were you in the Army for?
At 6 years and then 2 IRR. It was reserves, so
Oh, okay. Did you
I
deploy
call it-
anywhere?
no. I call it my fake Army time. I know it was real. I know I actually served, but when you're in the reserves, it feels a little bit fake sometimes.
Don't worry, we call you fake too. So
Okay. Well, my husband was actually real Army, so I totally know. Yeah. But I hated running so much, and when I met my husband, I started working out a lot, going to the gym and lifting, and then I had my son and didn't love the idea of bringing him to child watch at the gym. First kid, I was paranoid about everything. So I was like, well, I have this jogging stroller that we got. I could just run, I guess, with him to stay in shape. And so I just kind of started running, pushing him in the stroller. It was something I could do with him. And then we moved to Germany for a bit, and I really kind of started falling in love with running there. I got with a mom stroller, running group, and decided to, go through the whole gambit of 5K, 10K, half and full. And running became my sightseeing in Europe. It was well, let's go to Madrid and run a half marathon, and I get to see Madrid and stuff. And so that's kind of how I went through my love of running. I didn't really discover trail and ultra running until what year was it? I don't even remember what year it was. I only had 2 kids at the time. I have 3 now. But I'd already run a road 50K and decided to sign up for a 50 miler because I was like, why not? And I signed up for
50K.
Yeah, but it's all I knew at the time, and because I just ran roads, like that's what I did. So I signed up for a 50 miler, and it was a trail 50 miler, but it was pretty flat, and it was supposed to be on a looped course, but I couldn't make it because my husband had to like go away last minute, and I had no childcare. So I was like, well, I've done all this training. I'm just gonna sign up for whatever 50 miler I can find. And I signed up for one called the Lookout Mountain 50 miler. And I really knew nothing about trail racing or that I should check things like elevation gain or anything like that. And I was not at all prepared for that course. It was literally on a mountain, and I had been training for like a flat looped course. And it was like a mountain out and back race. And I DNF'd that one. That was my first DNF experience, but it actually didn't bother me too much because I just kind of had discovered like real trail and ultra running then and loved it. I'd never been to an aid station where they're like, oh, let me take your pack off for you and fill you up. What do you want to eat? And all this stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm used to like, here's a gel, go. And,
Throwing a cup of Gatorade at you?
Yeah, a cup of Gatorade.
And I loved it. So I was like, well, this is cool. I think this is kind of what I want to do now. So I didn't really like take that DNF too hard because that was, I knew I hadn't been prepared for that specific course. And then it also kind of introduced me to the whole world of ultra running and kind of what got me into it. So
we know that like trail and ultra running, well, trail running in general is way different than road running. Not the fact that running on trails is different, but the community is different. Mm-hmm. Since you ran for so many years on the road and then made the transition, like what was it like jumping into that crowd?
It was awesome. I loved the opportunity to like grab whatever snacks I wanted. I'd never seen somebody like cooking up like hot dogs and like ramen at an aid station before. It totally blew my mind. I had no idea what to expect, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the perfect combination of doing running and eating, which is just so cool. And and just how nice everybody was. Like it was just such a friendly environment from the people that I was running with and talking to on the trails, and just the people at the aid stations and stuff. Like I said, I'd never felt like anybody was there to take care of me during a race before until then, like where people genuinely wanted to help you and see you on your way. Like I'd fallen, my knee was like bleeding, and somebody wanted to help me, clean it off and stuff. And it kind of just blew my mind that was out there. I had no idea. Yeah.
Well, one thing you mentioned is you started running before you had, or right when you had your first kid, and then now you said you have 3. Obviously Robbie and I have zero experience in this, but how is it when you fall in love with something like running, and then you get pregnant and your running slows down, and then you have to essentially stop running for a period of time, but like how do you handle that?
Yeah, so with my first kid, obviously I hadn't really been running before, at least not much. And then I had, when I had my second child, my daughter, I ran still while I was pregnant with her. It didn't really affect that pregnancy too much for me. It was awful running at certain points while pregnant. I ran the Chicago Marathon when I was 8 weeks pregnant with her, and it was like 85 degrees that day.
Oh my gosh.
I morning sickness kicked in that day, so I couldn't eat anything. Hydrating was hard. I felt terrible. Took me forever to finish that marathon. They were closing down, folding up the tables and stuff at the water stops, as I was coming through at the end, because I was just so slow. But so I still did it with her. And then I had signed up before I knew I was pregnant with her for the Dopey Challenge in Disney World too. So I did that at 20 weeks pregnant. So that was something that I did that was interesting. I think the harder part is postpartum, because I feel like when you're pregnant, a lot of times you can kind of still, you have to slow down. It's hard. But like postpartum, it's like full stop. Like you're not running right after you have a baby. And I've had C-sections too, so it's just added that like recovery time on. So that's what really, I think, is the harder part, because I mean, postpartum, first of all, you feel like a totally different person and you've lost everything that made you you, like you're just totally different. And then you add the fact that you can't do the things that you like to do, like running or working out and stuff. You add that to it, and I think that makes it a lot harder. But I've always taken like my recovery like really seriously, and like done all the, you know, physical therapy and stuff to make sure that I'm safely returning to running, because I don't want to mess it up down the line. But yeah, my third pregnancy was a lot harder. I did not run nearly as much, if at all, during the pregnancy. And I think that was harder to come back from, because basically it was like COVID had happened like 2020, and then I was pregnant with her at the end of 2020. And then so it was like another like almost year of not doing anything. And during COVID, I kind of didn't do much running as much, just because races were canceled. It was kind of disheartening. So I took almost a good like 2 years off from doing much, and that was hard. It's always hard kind of coming back to it too, and feeling like you're starting from square one, because that 50-mile attempt was between my last two kids. And so I'd built all this fitness to run a 50-miler, and then basically felt like I lost it pretty much, because then I took a nice long break. And so it was like starting from square one again.
Yeah, that's going to be tough mentally, knowing where you were and then having to, you know, essentially take 2 years off and then come back into it. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. But yeah, I got there.
Well, once you got back into things, what did you jump into?
So I mean, I kind of did the progression. So after, my last child, I, just kind of worked up to doing, I think my first race coming back from her was a 10-miler. And then I did a half marathon and then a full marathon. And I knew that the end goal was to try to get a 50-miler, because I still wanted that. So, I had signed up for September 2022, the Georgia Jewel 50-miler.
That's a beast.
Yeah. I DNF'd. For a time.
Did you research this one before you signed up?
I did research this one, and I was good. I just I got cut for time. I got lost at one point, and then I got to the aid station too late, and they wouldn't let me go on. So that was a more devastating blow to me, because I had researched it. I felt really prepared. I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting into now, and I'm ready for this. And so that DNF was really hard for me. So I came back the next year, and I finished it. So 23, I finished the Georgia Jewel 50-miler. I went back to the same course and finished it. I was dead last, but I finished it. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
DFL.
Yep.
Did you get some prize for DFL?
No, I didn't. I basically crossed the finish line, and then they had to get everything down, because everybody had been waiting for me. The pacers were the sweepers were right behind me. And in the Georgia Jewel,
That's awesome.
there's this at the very end, they call it Mount Baker, and it's because the race directors, their last name's Baker, and it's like this incline that, I mean, if you stand upright, you will fall back. Like, my brother was pacing me, and he actually had to catch me, because I did try to stand up and catch my breath, and I started to topple back. It is so steep. It's so short. It's not very long, but you feel like you're never going to get up it, because it's at the very end, and it's just so incredibly steep. And the sweepers were like right behind me. They're like, "You're almost there. You could do it." I'm like, "No, I never want to do this again." And yeah, but then I got to the top of the hill and just sprinted to the finish because I was worried I wasn't going to make the cutoff. So, but yeah, it was a fun one. It was very wet and rainy and muddy that day.
Those are the best, right?
It seems to always happen to me.
And then you went for 100K too, right?
Yeah. So I DNF'd 100K earlier this year. You seen the theme here. This is why I decided to start a podcast about DNFing. I do finish races sometimes. I DNF'd the Kettle Moraine 100K this June, which was just mostly something that I'd signed up for as like prep for my 100-miler later this year. And then also my brother decided to, after pacing me at the 50-miler and then pacing my older brother at his 100-miler last year, he decided he wanted to try ultra running, and so he signed up for the 100K, and I had coached him through that, and so he was racing that as well, and he finished. Awesome. He was well ahead of me, and he finished. So that was my main concern, was him getting to the finish line, and there were a lot of reasons why I DNF'd this last one. It was mostly probably logistical. Just like planning out how much sleep I could actually get before we had to check out of, the Airbnb, and I had an early flight the next morning, and I then was going on a road trip with my kids like one day after that, and I was like, do I really want to be that low on sleep going into this? So I was able to accept it a little bit more, but it was another very rainy, muddy race. Yeah. I'm fully anticipating my 100-miler being rainy and muddy. It happens to me all the time.
What 100 are you doing?
No Business 100.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I don't go easy on myself.
How do you handle DNFs? Some people they crawl into a hole and don't come out, and then some people just catch them in stride and keep rocking and rolling. Like, how do you handle them?
I don't know. I feel like each one's kind of different. The first one that I did when I wasn't prepared for that race at Lookout Mountain, I was really okay with it. Like, I really didn't give it much thought. Like, it was kind of like, okay, well, I wasn't ready for this, so that was a learning experience, and that was cool, and I want to do this again. The first one at Georgia Jewel, I took really, really hard. I think I felt like I had been really ready for that race, and in a way, I almost look at that as like my first DNF, even though I'd already DNF'd before, because I was totally ready for this race. I had told everybody I was running this race, and so to then feel like I had to be like, nope, I couldn't do it, felt really defeating to me. But then it's like nobody cares, really. Like, nobody cares as much as you do. And I think once I realized that, I was able to kind of cope with it. And I went and I journaled like everything that happened in that race, and kind of like wrote about, what went wrong, what set me back, what I needed to work on, just so I could like spew it all out while it was like fresh in my mind. And then I just kind of set goals for myself, like for the next year, what I wanted to see myself do to get ready to do it again. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of worked for me. Journaling and writing it out is kind of the way I deal with it. Kettle Moraine, that one was a little bit harder, just because, I mean, I felt like at the end there was no reason for me to not have finished that race, which is easy to say when you're looking back on it, like, oh, well, why didn't I just finish it? But at the time, there were a lot of reasons to finish it, so I just kind of like journaled it out, and that kind of helps me, I don't know, get the feelings out about it, and then also kind of see it from like a different view, because then when I'm reading it, it's like, okay, like these things happened and now we can learn from them, and we've got it like documented, we can come up with a plan kind of thing. But I mean, these aren't the only DNFs I've had. I DNF'd like a 50K earlier this year, and I was like totally okay with it. I actually just legitimately did not want to go out on another loop of that race. And so I was like, okay, I'm done. It was a night 50K, and it was very cold. And it was like through a swamp, and it had rained that week, and the water was practically to my waist. And I was just out there. There were 3 of us night 50K runners. There were 3 of us.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was, and there were other like distances out there, but it was literally, I was alone. I was just alone in the dark, in like almost waist deep water, just trudging through. And I was like, okay, I came out here to get like night trail experience, and I got it. And I'm not going back out again, because I had to do 2 loops for the 50K. And I was totally okay with that. And that was more just like a choice. Like, I just kind of don't want to do it anymore. So, yeah, I mean, each one's a totally different experience. And I've talked about that before, I think, like on the first episode of my podcast, like the difference between like Kettle Moraine this year, where I was running the 100K and just kind of decided to like bail out, versus like me at the Georgia Jewel last September, where I was literally arguing with the race director to let me go on, because I actually came into one of the hard cutoff aid station 4 minutes past the cutoff. And he was like, can you make up that time out there? Like, I don't know if I should. I was like, I got this. I'm doing it. Like, I almost gave him no choice. I just kind of started running. Like, he can't, what's he going to do? Like, catch me and tackle me and say, no, don't go out there. Like, I just started going. So like, I have that mental fortitude. Like, I know it's there. So why wasn't it there during Kettle Moraine? I don't know. I don't have a clear answer for that yet. And like I said, there were a lot of different reasons, for that DNF. And that's just kind of part of what I'm exploring, because it's different each time.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Well, you mentioned coaching. You coached your brother. You're a full-time coach as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I homeschool my kids, so that's a full-time job in itself. Yeah, so my job is primarily coaching alongside staying home with them. So,
what are some of the philosophies that you use to your athletes?
I think my biggest thing is just like knowing that life is just absolutely chaotic, and trying to make training work with that. Like, I'm training for a 100-miler myself right now, and I am home with kids all day, and I am not a high mileage runner. I'm never going to be somebody who can put in like 100 miles a week. Maybe someday when like my kids are grown and out of the house, but it's not possible for me. And so I definitely use more like time on feet and like cumulative hours rather than miles ran. And because I'm a slow runner too, like I'm not fast, so my mileage is never going to look really high. That someone could train the same amount of hours as me in a week, and their mileage will be significantly higher than mine. And so I just kind of take what I've learned through my own training and bring it to my athletes. Like, I coached my brother, and he's constantly traveling for work. He doesn't have kids, but his schedule's crazy, and trying to help him like navigate that and, make it to where it can work for his life. And that's what I do. Like, I have a lot of athletes who are moms and people who are trying to pursue ultra marathons. And I think, we're scared of the distance, not because they're scared of like the actual distance itself, but the training that goes into the distance and how to make that work when you have little kids, or you have, you work a full-time job and you have kids and things like that. And I have firsthand experience trying to make that work. And sometimes it looks like splitting up your long runs. Like today I ran, 3 hours this morning and an hour and a half this afternoon, and, made it work that way. And so I try to bring in that mindset of it's not all about this magical 20-mile run you get on a weekend. It's about, look at this week. Like, let's look at the amount of hours you have put in this week, the amount of hours of work you've put in, and kind of getting away from that. Because a lot of the people I train to are people who have that road running, marathon training mindset of it's the, couple easy runs in the week, and then you have your speed day, and then you have your long run day, and getting out of that algorithm mindset of that's the magic way to make it work, because that's not the only way to make it work.
Yeah. I feel like when, coaching is so diverse. Like, everybody has their different, techniques that they use and the ways they go about it. It's interesting to hear different people and what they do. And I'm kind of on the same platform as what you are, and Robbie coaches as well. And I'm speaking for him, but I think he's on the same as well. As life is life, right? There's things that are going to take precedence over going out for a run, and there's things that are going to come up that have to be worked around. Like, I travel a lot with my job, and do crazy stuff as well. And so I'm always having to find ways to make it work. And when I travel, it may be 20 hours of travel. And so that day is gone. I'm not running that day. And so making that work is what I got to do. And so I understand when coaching that it's a struggle. It's life.
Yeah.
And running is a hobby to us. We don't get paid to do this. So when you realize that running is just a hobby and it's just here to have fun with it, you'll be fine.
And it's not that serious. It's okay. It's just fun and, an adventure. And I try to kind of just be that sounding board to remind people that, it's okay. We'll get it done. You were supposed to run, 4 hours today and you got 2.5. Cool. Maybe you can get another hour in tomorrow. It's okay. We will make it work. Yeah. And the fact that you're just showing up consistently is really what gets you there.
For sure. Well, through all of your racing experience, whether it be road or trail, there's got to be a funny story out there of you having an embarrassing moment. What would be an embarrassing moment?
There's probably so many of them.
And we've heard it all, so don't hold back.
I mean, I fall a lot. I fall a ton. It's not even embarrassing to me anymore, because that's me. I fall on the trail. I usually have people surrounding me and oh my gosh, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, nope, good, got it out of the way. I'm gonna fall at least once in a race. That's every single time. That's just me. I'm trying to think of an embarrassing story off the top of my head now. See, these are one of the questions you should ask to prepare people, because now there's probably so many of them.
No, absolutely not. We want to catch you off guard.
Yeah.
We don't want you to go in knowing what we're going to ask. That's not our style.
The falls that are the only things that can pop in my head right now. I'm really trying to think. I know there's stories out there because I'm just a fool. I don't know what's going on half the time.
Well, you can come back to it. Tell us what
if it pops in my head, I will definitely share.
Tell us what kind of gear you're using.
I have a Solomon Skin hydration pack. I wear Altras, which I know you and I have discussed before.
I do have my take on the Altras.
I know you do. I wear Altras. Although I will say I have ventured out to Topos now too, so I use both.
I say Topos are the Dollar General version of Ultra.
I actually kind of like them.
They're
Whatever,
so terrible.
man. You can,
those are
whatever.
the most.
You
those
can
are the
just,
awful shoes.
You can just whatever.
It's like wearing wooden
leave
clogs.
my Ultras alone.
I will let you have your Ultras, but Topos, they're like wooden clogs.
They are not. Oh my gosh.
I ran one 3-mile run in them, and I was like, absolutely not, and I sent them back.
Whatever.
Topos.
I'm just putting this disclaimer out there. Ultras are not why I DNF races. So just in case anyone listening is like, oh my gosh, this girl
I did
wears
not
Ultras
put two and two together, but now that I have that.
Your boy Scott Jurek on Instagram puts enough of that together where I'm
I
like, okay,
love
people
it.
are going to blame my
share it every
DNFs on Ultras. They're going to, yeah. Anyway, so I wear Ultras.
I fell into the hype a couple years ago. I blew my Achilles and my calf blew out. And so, I learned my lesson. No, I didn't blow my Achilles, but yeah, I had major issues. So I
No
definitely
lessons
walked away.
have been learned with me wearing Ultras. Everything is just fine. So, yeah, what else? Gear is what we're talking about. I don't know. I have like the Lecky, the ultralight poles, with the gloves and stuff, but I don't get to use those very much here because I'm in the low country. And
walking up the overpass with them.
Yeah, right. I actually went out on a run with them before Kettle Moraine because I wanted to make sure everything was like good on my hydration pack and everything that it felt all right. And I had just gotten the quiver for them. And so I like had them on my run and I was like, I probably look like such a goober right now. I have like all my trail running gear and I'm just like along the parkway, like running on the road.
The quivers
There's
are great.
probably an embarrassing story because I probably looked ridiculous. I'm like running by like McDonald's and I have all this gear on.
The quiver's a great idea, but man, I used it once and it like the poles just rattle in there and I can't.
Yeah, they
handle
do
that
rattle
sound.
a little bit, but they stay so like I didn't really have it. I guess I had them out a lot of the time, so it wasn't really an issue for me. But I mean, they rattle, but they stay there so securely. I feel like.
Yeah. No, I mean they stay in there. The
You
rattling
just
thing.
couldn't
to
stand the
me.
rattling.
They
It's
stay
better
so
than
good
like
you can't get them out.
Yeah, that is true as well. You can't
I've
get them
seen
out.
so many people try to get them
You're
out
over
and
the-
have to
you're
take their
like,
vest
really.
off.
I didn't have any issues.
Lucky. I was running.
She's a 1%er. She wears Ultras.
I am. I
has
wear
no
Ultras.
problem.
I have no
has no problem
problems
with
with
She
my
likes
poles.
Topo, or Topo, whatever you call it. Topo Chico.
I'm the exception to all the rules, I guess.
She can reach her poles behind her back.
I'm just that good.
You didn't know you were going to get roasted when you come to our podcast, did you?
I didn't. I don't know. What other gear is there?
Short shirt, hat.
I wear toe socks. I mean, short shirt, hat, it's like whatever I feel like wearing.
You don't have like a specific brand you really like?
No, I mean, I'm poor and I can't afford fancy things, so I buy things on sale, and I like Rabbit. Like, I really love a lot of their clothes, but I only buy the weird color combos that are on sale that like they couldn't sell in the first.
See, I love that stuff. Rabbit is pretty good gear. I like Rabbit too.
Yeah,
But-
I like
but
it a lot.
I'm
Or
the
I
same with
shop
you.
on like Poshmark or something. Like I get stuff like thrifted because it's the only way I can afford it. But yeah, that's kind of my gear. I just wear whatever. Yeah, as
Sweet.
far as clothes go, I don't have a specific brand. The only specific brand I'll stick to is Ultra.
What shoes do you like?
I like the Lone Peaks for trail, and I like the I wear Paradigm and Provision on road usually.
Have you tried their new ones that have the 4mm drop?
I did actually. I like them.
Okay,
It's a nice little change up, but I still prefer the zero drop.
got you. We'll convert her.
But Topo isn't zero drop. it's just low.
They do have a zero drop. Topo does.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't
Topo
have
has
the
zero
zero drop ones. Mine are like 3 millimeter, but
Yeah. Pretty like Hoka, I think is 4 as well. Well, most of Hoka's is 4.
Yeah, they
So
just
they're
changed
all
the
kind of that.
speed goat to 5.
Oh, look at them.
Yeah. It's like, really? What are you doing, Hoka?
Yeah. I run an 8 on trails. It doesn't bother me at all. An 8 to a 6, somewhere in there, depending on what shoe I wear. But
can't do it. Even wearing like the 4 millimeter on the Altras, I was like, oh my gosh.
it's like clouds. What is this? I can't handle this. I need that constant strain in my calf. I don't know.
Pain. My Achilles straining. No, it's good. Ultras are good, people. Don't dismiss them because these people
Well,
don't
if you're
like
listening
them.
to this podcast, you know what kind of content you're going to get on the Ultras.
I knew it was going to come up because you asked about gear, and I know I've specifically called you out for sharing Ultra memes before.
Oh yeah, we've had the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to get pro Ultra reviews and content, tell us about your podcast. That was a good lead in, right? That was a good lead in.
All I talk about is Ultras in that podcast about DNFs. No,
There's no correlation between the Ultras and DNFs. None at all.
Whatsoever. I know plenty of people who run in Ultras and they don't DNF as much as me. So there's not a problem with the Ultras. The problem may just be me. I just started a podcast with a friend of mine, and we are talking about DNFs, and races that go wrong. Obviously, it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I just kind of found I had been listening to another podcast where somebody was talking about a DNF, and I felt like it was just really refreshing to hear somebody else's DNF story. And I was listening to it coming right off of Kettle Moraine. And just some of the things they said, like I talked earlier about the logistical side of things, like they were talking about how logistical stuff has caused them to DNF before too. Like, well, I don't want to, not get much sleep, or we have to travel tomorrow and all that stuff, or thinking about other people, like, oh, I don't want my wife to have to drive out here in the middle of the night because I finished so late or something. And I realized that those kind of things are on my mind constantly, but I'd never really put that label on it or thought about it. And I just kind of started listening to the different reasons for DNFs and how people handle them and examining them, and it just popped in my head. I was like, why are we not talking about this so much more? Because it's happening. Most people who have run Ultras for a while have had DNFs. And I feel like a lot of podcasts are just, because you could argue that even in the ultra running world, it's becoming pretty saturated as far as podcast goes, that it's talking about the victories or somebody coming off a really great race or, whatnot. It's just telling their stories and highlighting the high points of their running. And I didn't feel like there's as much talk about the really bad days. And so I kind of just wanted to examine that. And I had put out a feeler on Instagram saying if you have DNF stories, I'd love to hear them. And Michelle reached out, and who's my co-host now, and just said, I am curious what you're doing, because the psychology and stuff behind DNFs has always fascinated me. And I kind of told her what my idea was, and she said, I love it. Are you looking for a sounding board or somebody to just talk this through? And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. First of all, do you want to just come in on this with me? And she wanted to. So that's kind of how we partnered together in this. And we just kind of jumped into it not knowing anything about podcasting. I've learned a lot on the fly. And yeah, so we have 2 episodes out now. When we first set up the podcast, when we talked about it, we had agreed on having episodes every 2 weeks, because I wasn't sure how much went into editing and putting things together and stuff. And I didn't want to put this timeline on myself that overwhelmed me and made me burn out on it. So we first said every 2 weeks, but it's proving to be a lot easier than I thought to put it together and get an episode out. And so we are starting to release them weekly now.
Cool.
So yeah, we have 2 episodes out and they'll come out every Thursday. And yeah, it's called Let's Run That Again. And yeah, it's not just about, DNFs. It's about just races that go wrong. We talk to people about the coaching perspective as far as DNFs. If you have an athlete that DNFs, how you kind of handle that going forward, and kind of examining the why we keep coming back to the sport that some days mentally and physically destroys us, and why we keep signing up for these races, or DNFing and then going back to that same course to redeem ourselves. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, where else can people find you?
I am on Instagram. It's at strong.mama.miles. And then we have an Instagram for the podcast as well. That's at Let's Run That Again. And then links to everything else is in there as well. But my website for coaching and stuff like that is strongmamamiles.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was it was cool to hear that there's zero correlation between Altras and DNFing. So
none at all.
Your Boy Scout jerk might say differently.
My feet are just fine. My feet and ankles are nice and strong. They're great. That's never the reason I DNF.
Awesome. Well, if you liked Heidi's story, please leave a review on whatever platform you listen to it on. It helps us get more podcasts out and let more people listen to it. So please leave us a review on this advertisement on Instagram, on Golden Hour Adventures Podcast Instagram. Leave us a comment. Tell us if you are an ultra wearer or if you're not an ultra wearer. Let's see how many comments we get. We'll see you on the trails.